Boker Tov, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun, and you're watching Israeli News Live. We have very breaking news, very serious breaking news coming out of Iraq this morning there. At 12 midnight last night, ISIS forces within a city called al-Baghdadi in Iraq, which is close to Ain al-Assad, a military training base for the United States. There is between 300 to 400 Marines that are there. There are Marines who are there that are training the Iraqi forces. There's special observers and trainers there at this base, and it was ISIS who broke into some sleeper cells that were within sight of the city there, and then of course ISIS forces coming in from the west and east also joined into the fighting. They have overtaken the town of al-Baghdadi. And of course, there is a great concern that these ISIS forces, as they have done many times in the past when they take over a town near a military base, will also attack the military base. And they did so with very quick force, and they have overrun the town very rapidly. And of course, it is being said that the United States government is very much aware of the circumstances, but of course, the foolishness of the Obama administration is saying that they would prefer that the Iraqi forces bring the situation under control, that they don't have to get involved in it. Well, it's quite ironic. If Syrian forces, or the ISIS forces there in Iraq were to take captive any American soldiers there, we will certainly see a bloodbath on national news all across the world. Why would the Obama administration even consider the possibility that Iraqi forces are able to fight and combat the ISIS forces? They've not been able to do so since, and they won't be able to do so now. Let's take a listen. We caught this news this morning on Al Jazeera. I'd like for you to listen to the actual broadcast being brought there.
Fighters attacked the besieged western town of al-Baghdadi. That's in Anbar province, and it's close to Ain al-Assad air base. That's where US Marines are training Iraqi forces. Now, most surrounding towns have already fallen under ISIL control after fighters advanced quickly across the Syrian border last year. Imran Khan is our correspondent with more from Baghdad.
The attack began around 12 p.m. on Thursday, and what Iraqi security forces are telling us that a number of what they say were ISIL sleeper cells activated themselves within the center of the town of Baghdadi and took over a number of buildings. They were then reinforced by ISIL fighters coming in from the west of the city and were able to take and control a number of government buildings. However, what we're hearing from the Iraqi security forces is they were able to go in and be able to take control of the town itself. However, local sources say that there are still a number of ISIL fighters within the center of the town itself, and clashes are still ongoing. Now, the Americans are very aware of this. They have about 300 security training advisors within Ain al-Assad base itself. Now, they would much rather that the Iraqi forces go in and take control and do the predominantly all of the fighting to get rid of the ISIL, who are very close to the base itself. Baghdadi is very close. But what we've seen time and time again is this tactic of taking over a town and a village near a government base and using that as a staging post. Now, there are conflicting reports as to whether ISIL fighters still remain in the center of Baghdadi itself. However, it is a tactic we've seen time and time again from ISIL fighters, and it is a real concern.
This is very disheartening to see that the Obama administration is not willing to immediately go into action. It just makes you wonder what the Obama administration really has in mind. Are they wanting U.S. soldiers to be taken captive? You know, they would probably surely outwardly say no, but it is very discouraging to see that they have not immediately done something about this situation, at least strengthen the arms that are there. 400 or 300 Marines is by no means able to withstand thousands of ISIS military people coming in on a base rapidly. So I just have to question the Obama administration and what their intentions are in this particular case here. Again, very serious breaking news. Al-Baghdadi has fallen to ISIS hands, a city right next to Ain al-Assad, a military training base. United States Marines in this base in Iraq. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun with Israeli News Live. Erev Tov, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. It has actually come under the first attack. A small band of ISIL soldiers actually came in and attacked the Ain al-Assad military base, the U.S. military base. They were killed by the Iraqi soldiers there in Ain al-Assad, but it only begins to question whether or not the Iraqi soldiers will be able to handle if an all-out attack comes from ISIL. Let's take a listen here at the news coming out of Al Jazeera.
Began on midday on Thursday, according to Iraqi security forces. Sleeper cells, that's what they're calling them, sleeper cells from ISIL activated themselves. They took over parts of the center of the town and mounted attacks further out with the aim of getting to Ain al-Assad airbase. Now, what we're hearing is that the area has been cleared by Iraqi security forces of those fighters, but according to local sources, there are a number of ISIL fighters still within the center of the town itself. Also, what we're hearing is reinforcements have been sent in by ISIL from the west, and that's becoming a problem as well. So to wrap up, what CENTCOM have told us is there was an attack on the base. That's the first time ISIL have got so close to a coalition airbase, but they say their soldiers weren't under threat, and the Iraqi security forces dealt with those ISIL fighters coming in.
This is weaker, but I think this attack shows us that the data is really important to look at, and that real data, numbers of fighters, amount of territory under control, would show that the Islamic State is still quite formidable.
So do people in Washington need to be more careful then with that narrative you talk about, that the fight against ISIL is being won?
Another interesting point from Al Jazeera, as they made there too, is that the U.S. claims that they've done a lot of damage to the Islamic State, ISIL, but as the evidence actually shows, they've done very little damage in the bombing campaign that they have been doing with coalition forces. It says that only approximately 1% of ISIL's forces have been lost as a result of that. And if the body count is true, then they've only lost 10% of their military force as far as manpower, which they are constantly recruiting and getting more fighters in. There again, we also concerned about the fact that who created the ISIS group to begin with, known as ISIL now. Very interesting, because the U.S. fingerprints seem to be all over that as well, and one reason why the U.S. president may be slow to react in defense of the U.S. Marines there on the base in Ain al-Assad. But it is a fact that something should be done, especially seeing as there was a small band of ISIL soldiers that came in earlier today and attacked the base there in Iraq, and the U.S. president should be doing something to better arm and equip the soldiers that are on the ground there, as well as even considering an air assault campaign of wiping out any of the ISIL components that may be in and around the area there of al-Baghdadi. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun, and you are watching Israeli News Live.